Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich, and today I am doing a review of the Bard College of Percussion. This is a product that you can download now on DMsGuild for $5.95. This is created by Chad Lensch. Chad sent me an email, and he asked if I could run this through my review system, so he sent me a free copy. I did not have to pay for the copy that I'm reviewing today, but should you go out there and purchase this content, what I'm talking about and reviewing today is exactly the same thing that you will be getting. It is a 32-page PDF that you can find on DMsGuild. You will notice that the layout is going to look a little different simply because I am now adding a half a point in all three of the categories in layout, design, and editing. For art and for content, it's possible if I give you sort of the main baseline score less than perfect, you might get an additional half point if you're really close to kind of getting that next number. Now, all this being said, the total score, the most points you can earn, is still going to be capped at 10. A perfect score is still going to be 10 out of 10. But whenever I give you, let's say, a 3 out of 5 for content, what I will do is I will ask, how close were they to getting a 4? Or if I give you a 4 out of 5, how close were they to getting a 5? If they were close, I might give you that extra half point. And at the end of it all, maybe those half points might add up to giving you a little bit of a higher score overall. But most importantly, I'm adding in the half point in these just simply to give me a little bit more wiggle room and a little more talk through to kind of explain, especially when someone is really close, you're on the cusp, and it's just, there's a few little nuances in layout, design, and editing that would have taken it from a 1 to a perfect score. Now I have that half point that I can work with. Yes, it did come up when I was kind of thinking through this review process, but I've been thinking about this for the last few reviews, so hopefully I've kind of nailed down my review process a little bit, and moving forward, you're going to see this half point review system. We have a 32-page PDF created, as I said, by Chad Lensch, and this is a resource for bards. I would have liked to have seen some sort of indicator on the front cover speaking to the edition. It would have been nice to have seen a little something there, but no big deal. As we start going through with layout, it's clean. It looks good. I like this parchment. It's got a little bit of a design flourish. It's got some cool little border elements and page numbers and whatnot, but there isn't anything that is obtrusive or taking away from the readability of this document. So as we get through, we have a really good, efficient table of contents. Everything looks nice. I like the bold letters, or the words I should say, that kind of indicate that this is a heading, and you've got, so I know the street musician, military drummer, and the shaman. Immediately I'm identified kind of this outline format. That's why I obsess about font usage and italicize and bold. I know these three things are the background. They're not their own sort of separate thing as the magic percussion instruments are. Navigation is spot on. If I want to look at the military drummer and I type an 8, not 89, the military drummer shows up. So good work that the efficiency of navigation is certainly there. As we scroll through, there's a few little bits, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's a little oversight or maybe just a couple of buttons that were not clicked or selected appropriately during the editing process. There's a little bit of inconsistency with the fonts. So this font, being that you're looking at a lot of words, columns, and paragraphs, and so on, it looks good in that it's a serif font and it looks very novel-esque, right? It has that readability to it, good spacing. But this style, or this font, it looks a little different from this. And I don't know if it's the exact same font family, which I think it is, but this looks a little taller and a little more narrow and a little more stretched. The spacing just visually, and perhaps I think a big part of this is just, this is someone with a 25-year trained eye that's looking at all of these little details. I've spent a ridiculous amount of money and educational time digesting things like this, of nitpicking and finding these little things. The reason why this stands out so much is because, so we have this sort of post-it note thing right here, right? Where you've got a different font right here, and then you have this kind of cursive handwritten font. And then because I'm seeing this type of font, but yet this type of font, but I'm being told sort of the same style and the same type of information, but visually my eye kind of keeps going back and forth between the two, and then a third type. And then as we get into these sort of tables and charts, you have another type where it's sans serif and it looks a little more modern font. But then when you get into like the adventure back here, you'll notice that This font is a little smaller, it's a little more concise, it's a little, squeezed together a little more. It just looks a little different. As such, all told, everything looks really good. It's laid out really well. It's very legible and readable, but it's not perfect. But here is where I'm afforded the ability to kind of add in a little bit extra by this new half point system. I am going to give layout design and editing 1.5 out of 2 possible points. Next, let's take a look at the artwork. We always start with the front cover. It's a really cool piece of artwork. I've been looking lately, within the last week or two, at a lot of, I think it's called like photo mashing or photo bash. And what it is a lot of high-level concept artists, for efficiency and getting through stuff quickly, is they find photos of something and then they kind of put their touch, their skill work on top of it, of artwork, where they hand draw some elements. I'm seeing that, but I'm also being reminded a little bit, as much as there's a cool artistic quality to it and I like it, I'm being reminded a little bit of photographs. Now, as I get through, I'm noticing actual stock photos, right? So it does fit because there is a level of detail and specificity here in the content that's being presented. We're talking about the College of Percussion, and Chad talks about in the introduction how he's lived the life of a percussionist. He's taught it. He's been on drum lines, universities, and likewise. So there's some very specifics in the types of items and the types of instruments that are here, things that I've never heard of before. So it can be quite difficult to wrangle in and find concept artists that understand what the hell you're asking for, or find some sort of pre-stock concept art already out there of someone that's drawn a kalimba, or someone that has drawn the differences between tempo blocks and a patica or patika. Whereas if you were looking for artists that have already drawn ogres or orcs, there's millions of pictures and interpretations of that stuff out there. So I understand there's certainly some limitations on the availability of artwork. So I don't know overall how I feel about the visuals being represented by actual photos. It does tell me what that thing is better than any piece of artwork could, because it's an exact representation of it, right? It's a photograph of that instrument. But here's where I have a little bit of the issue. I don't really know what I'm looking at. I don't necessarily know what a tongue drum is versus a patica versus a djembe, okay? And I think the picture above the column represents it. So this is the djembe, or I apologize if I'm saying this stuff wrong. I don't know it. I believe the agogo bells is maybe this, okay? I know that's the handpan. I've seen it in Japan being played. That's the xylophone. But it would have been nice, and this kind of can tie art a little bit into the layout design and editing. Oftentimes they go one and one. And because there's no labels, it would have been nice to have seen a label that says that's the handpan. Again, I know that the pictures are now sort of above, and then you'll see the picture, and then below it, it explains what it is. But where you have pages like this, where there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, that's the dolak, and those are the symbols. I know that. But you don't have pictures everywhere. So a little more clear, concise, I guess, direction of where you're drawing your eye and navigating your way would have been nice to know, so I know exactly what I'm looking at. And if you just simply put dolak in here in some little cool white font, it's an immediately identifiable thing from something that is otherwise completely foreign to me. But because you're limited and it doesn't seem like you have had the availability of all this artwork, what happened throughout as well is when we get into this sort of adventure mode, where there's a really nice, cool wealth of content here in this new faction called the Seekers of Kurtlemak, and then you've got these NPCs, you don't have any artwork for them either. You don't have any artwork for these 3 NPCs. You've got magic items. All those other percussive instruments I was showing you are just the regular non-magical ones. Now you have magical ones. The Ettercap Bola and the Hiding Kalimba and Bombo's elaborate thing. You have the Mallets of Grumsh, the Pan of the Void. These are magic items. These are things that should stand out and are larger than life. But yet there isn't a picture of them. Now, yes, I know you can refer back of knowing, okay, this Hiding Kalimba, whatever this is, that's a Kalimba. These Ettercap Bolas are patikas or patikas. I can go back, but once again, as I'm navigating my way back, I have to kind of remember, okay, that's right, here's where it is, and then there it is. So you can see how sort of that inefficiency of labeling, and most importantly, because there isn't an assigned piece of art or image for every single thing, you're missing it for NPCs, which is a key point. You're missing it for the magic items, which is a key point. So because of that, I have to give art here 1 out of 3 possible points. Now let's jump into the really good parts. So overall, what are we getting? We are getting 2 new Bard colleges. So we have the Bard College of Percussion, but what we have is we've got sort of 2 elements, and they're very different. We have the pitched percussion bard, and then we have the non-pitched. I didn't even know that was a thing. We've also got 3 new unique backgrounds. There are, as you saw with some of the artwork, 17 percussion instruments. There's an entire adventure which has 3 NPCs in it. NPCs that are percussion bards, so you get to see sort of what that vibe and feel might look like in the equipment they carry. You've got a new faction. You've got some new magical items and such. So there's a lot of really cool content here. So as far as looking at these 2 percussion bards, so if we just talk through very quickly, the pitch-based one uses bonus proficiencies where when you join, you basically get to pick some proficiencies and some new skills. You have a healing melody, which lets you use your bardic inspiration die to heal a character within 60 feet. At level 6, you get mending harmonies, which allows you to use your bardic inspiration in order to cast some spells that are not otherwise available for the bard, such as aid. And if you use multiple bardic inspiration dice, you get to give additional hit points beyond the initial 5 that's presented with aid. You get to use your bardic inspiration dice to use lesser restoration, things of that nature. At the highest level, you have tonal dissonance, which is basically you're creating a cacophonic, devastating sound, which you add all your bardic inspiration dice that you want to spend together, and you roll that, and you deal psychic damage equal to the result, and you stun the opponent or the enemy for 1 round. And that's just the pitch base. Again, in real life, I don't know what the difference between the 2 is, other than one's pitch, one's non. But the non-pitch base bard feels very different. So you're kind of being offered 2 very distinct sort of mini subclasses within the subclass of the percussion bard. Because the non-pitched one, I love the flavor here where bludgeoning weapons for this subclass are considered to have the finesse property. That's elegant and that's really cool and flavorful. I love that. You've also got at 3rd level drums of battle where doom 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 doom. What is that? Conan maybe? By playing that, you can potentially cause sort of this energy and allow an ally to move an additional 10 feet or something like that. You can frighten people by making them make a wisdom throw because they're hearing the drums of panic. And then finally at 14th level, you have the cadence of war, where you choose a number of creatures equal to your charisma modifier within 60 feet that can hear you, allies basically. And by playing this inspiring and exhausting cadence of stimulating tempos and dynamics, you can see there's little bits here where there's a level of depth and knowledge from Chad that goes beyond just basic D&D speak, where he's talking about things that happen, from a musicality sense. But as a result of that, you get advantage. You give advantage to those allies on attack rolls and saving throws, and they also get resistance to the 3 main weapon damage types. That's awesome and really cool. So I like that there's 2 very different things. Beyond that, you get 3 new backgrounds. You have one called the street musician. You have another one called the military drummer. And the last one is the shaman. And all 3 of these have all of the full kit of everything, skill proficiencies and what tools they use. What does their equipment look like, and you've got the full treatment of their personality traits and ideals and bonds and flaws and whatnot. You have, as I showed, the percussion instruments at exhausting detail, the handpan and the tempo blocks and the kalimba and so on, and a bunch of new and different things. You have a cool adventure where he was trying to, as he says here, it's designed for 4 level 2 characters, and it's called the Seekers of Kurtlemak, where you've got this new faction also called the Seekers. It's kind of a lighthearted adventure, but it's a way of sort of spotlighting and highlighting a percussion bard NPC, or 3 of them, I should say. And you've got like 1, 2, 3, with a full map, 4, 5, NPC, entire stat block, 6, 7, 8. I didn't expect to see this. It's nice to see this sort of little mini adventure thrown in using some of the cool bits that are already in here. Okay? Beyond that, you've got some magic items. Now, finally, at the end, the best bit is this right here. He offers some links. And this, I think, is the best way that I can give sort of a summary to the eventual score that I'm going to give to content. So Chad has information here that is clearly it's a passion project. And based on reading the introduction, this is a life that he's lived, okay? And I kind of equate this to myself where I'm wanting to possibly create some content based on like barbarians, very physical, strength-based classes, because I have a lifetime of, or quite a few decades of background of strength and conditioning and physicality and training in that realm. And I like to try and figure out how I can take that passion and knowledge, but kind of wrangle it in a little bit and figure out how it applies in the D&D and like sort of at the table space. And what Chad has done here is he's shown his expertise and his knowledge. Look at the names of these instruments. I didn't know these things existed. But because he has all these little nuances, what I initially thought with content was, I'm going to give this about a 3. There's a lot here and it's good, maybe a 3, 3.5 at best. And I thought there's a lot here, but it's kind of narrow in its focus, right? I thought, unless you're playing bards or you're really going to include a heavy element of bards in your world, it's not really going to fit much. So you know how I always talk about with content, is there something I can bring with me to the table right now immediately? And does this inspire me to do more, to go out there and just kind of think through things and create additional content? Am I sparked creatively? And it felt kind of narrow. And then when I have, sections on all these instruments, yes, there's a lot of content there, but they almost felt so nuanced and specific, kind of like Chad talking about it from the level of detail he has. But if we don't have that shared information and that shared level of passion about this particular thing, it can almost feel like content that maybe we're not even going to use, right? Like, I don't want to bring my campaign so narrowly moved into bards and percussion bards that I'm going to incorporate and make use of all of these things, right? I've seen that happen with cooking and those that are dabbling into, they're chefs and they're into spices and it turns into, here's some new poisons and some new alchemy, but you almost have like your own little mini game going around that. What happened though by putting these links is he's found all these links on all these instruments where you click on it and it's a real life video of people playing that instrument. So you get to visually see on video what it looks like being played. You get to hear it. You get to hear the subtleties and the nuances. And it's almost like a way that Chad has taken us and brought us into the world that he is so passionate and knowledgeable about. And then he offers these background elements for just ambiance and put these sounds in the background when you talk about that bard playing in that tavern. And what's happened now is it's taken the content from a possible 3, 3.5, and it's made me feel like, you know what? I wasn't going to obsess about it that much, but now I'm interested. Now I'm sold. I do want to explore more. Even if I don't have a bard in my party, I want to create a bard NPC. I want to say that he is the non-pitch percussive guy. And he's in this tavern. And folk from the region, the entirety of the region learned and knows about, this guy's famous. And maybe one week he plays the kalimba, and another week he plays the tongue drum, and another week he plays the rope tension drum. And by clicking on these links, I can learn very quickly a little bit about them and play some of this music in the background. And you start adding layers of depth and detail. And the best compliment I can give about this content is just, yes, there's so much here. You've got these new subclasses, you've got these new backgrounds, you have an adventure, you have all this stuff, right? But what happened is, it was initially presented as sort of narrow focused, we're talking about bards only, right? There's nothing here for barbarians and wizards and warlocks and sorcerers and so on. And not only that, I'm going to present to you the little bits that I know because I've lived and I've breathed this stuff. But even if you don't share that stuff, I want to kind of bring you on board. But by adding these links and just the ability to offer this, basically to say, I want you to invest yourself as well. And by having that ability to do that and sort of teach me something, that's the best applause and clap that I can give you, is you're not just giving me content here that I might be able to use. You're trying to teach me something. And in that, you're sharing your love and your passion for something. I have to give the content here 4.5 out of 5. It's so close to being just absolutely perfect. There's a wealth of stuff here for $5.95. This is my final score. I hope this video helped all of you, and I'd like to say thank you so much, Chad, for sending this to me and allowing me to do this review and giving me this product. That's all I have for you folks. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.